The ground was dry, cracked under the midday sun's heat, shimmered across the empty field. Then, a shadow passed overhead. A vulture swooped low, its wings casting a dark shape across the earth. It landed just a few steps away from something lying still, a long coiled shape that looked lifeless. A snake. The vulture hopped closer, head tilting, its sharp beak ready to strike. It thought this was an easy meal, but the snake's eyes snapped open. Before the bird could react, the coils exploded from the ground. The snake struck like lightning, its mouth wide, fangs flashing white in the blazing sun. The vulture flapped wildly, dust rising round them as wings and scales collided in a violent blur. The snake coiled tighter, hissing, trying to drag the bird down. The vulture fought back, beating its massive wings, claws slashing at the coils, desperate to break free. The air was filled with the sound of feathers tearing and scales scraping against the dirt. For a moment, it seemed the vulture might lose. Its wing pinned, its beak snapping helplessly. But with a final furious burst of strength, it jabbed its beak straight into the snake's side. The snake recoiled, releasing its grip just enough. The vulture leapt into the air, wings thrashing, leaving the ground in a storm of dust. The snake struck again, barely missing as the bird shot upward, disappearing into the sky. On the ground, the snake lay coiled, still hissing, its body tense. It had defended itself, but it had also reminded every creature watching that in the wild, what looks weak or slow can be deadly in an instant. High above, the vulture circled once, keeping its distance this time. It had learned a lesson it would never forget. Not every meal is worth the risk. And maybe that's the lesson for us, too. Sometimes what looks like an opportunity is actually a trap. Sometimes walking away is the bravest choice. You're probably thinking that's a weird thing to say about a snake, but stick with me here. When we first meet the snake, it is literally playing dead. Its scales are camouflaged perfectly to blend in with the dried earth, making it almost impossible to see. Even more importantly, though, is what it represents. In our story, it symbolizes something that seems harmless or even helpless, but that's just how the snake wants us to see it. This gives it the perfect chance to trick its predator, which comes in the form of the vulture. In nature, there are so many animals that rely on camouflage like this. Stick insects, leaf insects, and praying mantises all come to mind. The key to being able to use camouflage, though, is to stay completely still while you're doing it. If you move at all, your predator will catch on to the fact that you're not actually a leaf or a twig. You've got to be committed. So let's take a look at this guy here. See how he's perfectly blending in. He's hoping that his predator doesn't notice him. But if the vulture hadn't landed so close, I don't think he would have been safe. I mean, look at how close they were. But the thing is, from the vulture's point of view, it didn't really stand a chance. Once that snake struck, there was no way that bird was going to get out of that alive. When a gaboon viper strikes, it does not hold back. They're one of the most venomous snakes in the world. So when it latched onto that bird, it was basically game over. The good news, though, is that vultures have a natural resistance to snake venom. So this guy wasn't done just yet. Now, snakes don't typically go after birds. It's not because they're scared of getting poisoned, because they aren't. It's because birds move pretty fast, and snakes need their food to stay still for a little while after they eat. Gaboon vipers, however, are pretty big. They can grow up to 6 feet long, so it's not unheard of for them to take on prey like this. Once that snake struck, the fight was over in a matter of seconds. You'd think that the vulture would keep struggling to free itself, but as soon as that snake latched on, it knew it was going to die. It just defaulted to a sort of panic mode where it tried anything it could to escape, like flapping its wings on the ground. It was really only a matter of time before the snake killed it. When the snake coiled around the bird, it was clear that the vulture was doomed. Snakes are amazing at controlling their body like this. They can wrap themselves around objects multiple times and make it basically impossible to get away. Plus, they don't get tired doing this. No matter how long the vulture struggled, the snake wouldn't get exhausted and slacken its grip. And that brings us back to why the snake didn't kill the vulture right away. Snakes wait until their prey is dead before swallowing it whole, so they don't end up choking. That's why it gave the vulture a little space. The gaboon viper may not have meant to let the vulture free, but it did give it one last chance to escape, although it wasn't much of a chance. If the snake had been able to bite the bird while it was on the ground, it definitely would have killed it right then and there. But because it didn't, the vulture managed to live another few moments. This is why the snake feels threatened by the vulture. If it gets too close, it risks getting bitten by those powerful beaks, and that's exactly what happens. The vulture gets in just close enough to jab its beak into the snake, and this makes the snake release its grip. Now, vultures have these giant beaks for a reason. They're built for tearing through flesh with ease. Their snouts are also incredibly tough and scaly, so even if the snake bites them, it won't be able to do much damage. The snake, however, can't say the same about its teeth. Teeth are made of dentin and covered in shiny enamel, which makes them hard. But unlike bones, they don't have a calcium core. This means they're not as strong as you might think. When the vulture rams its beak into the snake, it's essentially poking a hole in it. Snakes also don't have eyelids, which leaves their eyes exposed and vulnerable. This is why snakes will often roll into a ball when they're scared. It protects their eyes from getting poked or scratched. But if the snake keeps them open, like in our video, it leaves them open to attack. We often think of snakes as ruthless killers, and that's true. They kill lots of people every year, but just like everything else in nature, they're just trying to survive. And sometimes the best way to survive is to run away. This is why the snake finally lets the vulture go. It knows that if it holds on any longer, it'll get hurt. So it releases the bird and hopes that it runs away. Surprisingly, the snake has actually saved itself in doing this. By letting the vulture go, it hasn't wasted any energy. It can now slither away and find somewhere safer to hide. And that's the real reason why the snake had to let the vulture free. If it held on any longer, it would have used too much energy and it wouldn't be able to get away. There's a lot of lessons we can take from this video. One of them is that sometimes you gotta know when to walk away. If the vulture had kept fighting, it would have eventually died, and that would have been pointless. Another lesson is that sometimes what seems like an easy target isn't always an easy meal. Just like the snake, things aren't always what they seem. Finally, this shows us that sometimes you have to be willing to walk away from a fight. If the snake had hung on longer, it would have lost its life. And just like that, our circle of life ends and begins again. Now watch. Baby monkey falls into the water and tries to climb back up. What happens next is genius. Or check out rare white snake swallows mouse. People freak out.